Well, we're just days away from the January 21st deadline. The U.S. is making it much tougher for Nigerians to visit by introducing a visa bond system. Essentially, if you're applying for a standard tourist or business visa, you might be asked to cough up a security deposit of $5,000, $10,000 or even $15,000 before you can travel. So the idea is that this money acts as collateral. That is, you get it back if you leave the U.S. on time, but the government keeps it if you overstay or break the rules. Now, this move by the Trump organization is a pretty aggressive attempt to cut down on people staying past their visa deadlines. For most Nigerians, it's a massive financial hurdle that makes a simple trip to see family or even attend a meeting nearly impossible. So on top of the high cost, the new rules mean that you can only fly into specific major airports like JFK or Dulles, adding another layer of hassle to the whole process, which means that you might, after flying to these airports, you would have to pay again to fly to your destination. So joining us to dissect the implications of this visa bond policy are our Kimiebi Ebienfa, spokesperson for Nigeria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He will be joining us. We also have Levi Mboushou, a global affairs analyst in Kinshasa, DR Congo, and also John Thon-Majok, senior advisor for Institutional Development Migration Policy Institute. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us at this time. So let me begin with you. Let me begin with Levi. Now, Levi, the Trump administration cites high overstay rates as the primary trigger for this policy. And yet, recent data suggests that Nigeria's B1, B2 overstay rate sits around 5.56%, which is well below the 10% threshold often cited, for such punitive measures. Now, tell us, what are your thoughts on this policy? Is it driven by data, or is it, as critics will suggest, a political tool designed to target specific demographics?
I'd go for the latter. It's a tool to curb the demographic upsurge of certain nationals and people coming from other countries and parts of the globe, Nigeria not left out. We all know that Nigeria has a strong demography, which is seen not only in Nigeria, in parts of Africa, but also in the West, in Asia, in Latin America and other parts of the world. But the U.S. is a choice destination for many Africans, many people in parts of the world. Everybody wants to go settle in the United States, visit friends and relatives there. We all know it's not unknown to anyone that President Trump is quite a high-handed person. He didn't come from relative obscurity to become president. He came from the who is who in America's business milieu, in America's entrepreneurial milieu. So this is a political, geopolitical, diplomatic tool that President Trump is using to leverage America's already existing soft power on every other person in the world. And I also want to say this, that there are economic undertones, there are economic underpinnings that come with such a decision. It is not an innocent decision. It's not a decision that he just woke up from sleep one day and took and decided to take and then tighten the noose on Nigeria's neck or on the other countries, because Nigeria is not the only target. But like you say, Nigeria's overstay for the B1, B2 and other tourist visas is way below the threshold, as we see it, around 10%, that threshold. So this tells us that nothing happens for nothing in politics, particularly in global geopolitics. So we see an unhidden agenda we see an agenda that is not really hidden per se, is barely veiled. So Trump has an agenda in all of this, just like he does in other things he's been doing around the globe.
Speaking of that hidden agenda, let's come to John. John, we know that the 2020 pilot program, which this new policy effectively revives, failed to produce any substantive data on whether bonds actually deter illegal migration. So if the first experiment yielded no evidence of success, what is the logic in reviving it now on a broader scale?
The logic from the government perspective is to assess the operational feasibility of posting and discharging bonds, because in the previous guidance by the U.S. State Department, use of bonds was discouraged because it's considered cumbersome and that there is a administrative burden in processing the bonds. So the administration argues that there is no evidence to support that. So that's one of the rationale to assess the operational feasibility in order to inform future decisions. So the Visa Bond pilot program runs 12 months from August 20th, 2025 to August 5th, I believe, 2026. And that is to assess that evidence while targeting the countries that are on the list. Out of the 38 countries for the Visa Bond pilot program, more than 60% are from Africa, including Nigeria, as you pointed out. And so it raises the question of whether the problem overstay is the only one, or are there others that are being addressed? One of the other factors being addressed by the policy and the rationale is that the security and vetting process in some countries make it difficult for the U.S. to determine the probability of someone from those countries overstaying their visas. And so in the case of Nigeria, they look at the activities of Boko Haram and the Islamic State in some part of the country. And so that is in addition to overstay of the visa. That is one of the rationale and justification for this. So Nigeria is doubly impacted here. It's on the Visa Bond pilot program, but it's also on the partial travel ban list.
Okay. Now, let's come back to you, Levi. Levi, rights groups, have actually called this discriminatory by design. So when you look at the list, you have Angola, Senegal, Nigeria, it is overwhelmingly comprised of global South nations. But let's also consider the human cost. For a Nigerian family needing emergency medical treatment in Houston or a student attending a conference in Boston, this bond is an upfront cash demand. Does this not violate the fundamental principles of international mobility and also access to essential services?
Oh, yes, it does. Like you say, it tightens things and makes life extremely difficult for the common man. By that, I refer to the people like you and me who live in this part of Africa, south of the Sahara, or like you rightly put it, the global South. It's discriminatory. It goes against every fiber of human rights. It goes against every ounce of humanity. And then, of course, it smells and smacks of the fact that Trump is high-handed, that he doesn't really consider the commoner down in the streets, in the homes in Nigeria, in Angola, in other parts of the globe or in the global South affected by this. And he doesn't really give a damn about what happens to them. All he cares is about how he's seen. I must say that he's come down as someone being so... Is some narcissist, if you would say. He doesn't care. But then we expect that at some point someone should speak out, that America should stop thinking that she can do anything and get away with it. It's unthinkable. It's inconceivable. It smells of everything around discrimination. And that should not be carried on by America, who is seen, well, who had been seen up until recently as a beacon of righteousness until certain files and things that America had done in the name of democracy were being declassified. But this is every ounce discrimination, I would say.
Okay.
It speaks of disregard for humanity or for the very human dignity of the family in Abuja wanting to visit a child in Boston, of someone wanting to visit a relative who is sick in Columbus, or of someone wanting to pursue their dream. Where is the pursuit of happiness? Where is the fundamental right where we were told that everyone on the face of the earth, every human being had the right to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Where is that? It's not. There is no freedom. There is no opportunity here. This is a noose around Africa's neck, I must say.
All right, let's find out if John Thon also agrees that this is discrimination, because also the State Department promises that these bonds are refundable. But given the bureaucratic hurdles, often associated with U.S. immigration, where visa interviews can actually take years to even schedule, what guarantees do travelers have that they will see their monies returned in a timely manner, or even at all?
Yeah, there are different perspectives in addition to the government here. One is the perspective from countries that are being put on the list here, whose nationals come to the U.S. They argue that, again, as put out earlier, that these punish ordinary people who damage diplomatic relations between the U.S. and those countries and hurt economic ties. So that's one perspective. The other perspective is that, which is all related, is that these people, some of these people have nothing to do with any security threat, and so that could really have implication on the humanitarian aspect. And then people coming through business visit, tourists, they come for that particular purpose. And so it will hurt that kind of sector, both in the U.S. In particular. That's how the others view this. And then there is also the business side and education side in general, which is it has implication on trade, and it has an implication on the hospitality sector, for example. And so all of this to say that every country has its diplomatic tools at its disposal. And so while this is addressing the problem of a stay from the government perspective, it could also have unintended consequences, one of which is where we talk about affordability. Countries in Africa, most of them, including Nigeria, the GNI per capita is below the bond threshold of 15,000, for example, the highest. And so if, for example, you want to visit the U.S. as a tourist or on business, and you have 15,000, would you just not go and invest in business instead of using it as a bond? That's the way to look at it, because the affordability, the price tag is high. But then that brings another point, which is only the rich from those countries would be able to afford it. And then the average people that would often come for family reunification, family visit, Nigeria has a large diaspora in the U.S., those will be impacted. And that has implication on the diplomatic front, because people-to-people diplomacy is key. And if people are not interacting with each other, coming to visit the U.S., then that has implication on both bilateral relations.
Okay, now I'm told that we have the spokesperson for Nigeria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Kimiebi Ebienfa, joining us live from our Abuja studios. If you can hear me, Mr. Ebienfa, let's have your thoughts, because we're actually about to wrap up this particular segment, so would love to hear your thoughts on all of this. And there have been complaints of the fact that travelers on this bond are now restricted to entering through specific airports like the JFK or Dulles. Does this logistical bottleneck not add yet another layer of cost and complexity, effectively penalizing travelers before they've even cleared customs? All right, we can't seem to, connect to Mr. Ebienfa. So let me just pass that question quickly to Levi. Levi, I mean, if a traveler's flight is cancelled or they're delayed by a day due to circumstances beyond their control, we know that they risk forfeiting the entire bond. So is there any leniency built, or should there be any leniency built into the system, or is it a zero tolerance revenue trap?
It's a zero tolerance revenue trap, but I say this: there should be leniency, that there should be some mitigating measures around these kind of arrangements, especially given the fact that we all know that, humanly speaking, from the human rights point of view, this was not even to have come to place in the first place. I remember John saying that this is class discriminatory in the sense that only the rich would have access to this kind of arrangement, because how on earth would an average family in Zambia, in Tanzania, in Angola, in Nigeria, or in Mauritania be able to come up with this huge amount of money? And then we all know that people miss their flights for circumstances beyond their control. Now, what measures are there what measures are put in place so that these people or these persons or these families do not suffer? And like you said, this comes as a coffin nailer. It nails the coffin on the already dehumanizing plight that many commoners in these countries, targeted countries, go through. So in my view, I guess there should be some world policeman calling this administration to order and telling them, hey, you need to sit up and you need to tone down on your Make America Great Again policy.
Okay. Well, I wish we could actually have your final thoughts, but we have actually run out of time because we're expecting guests from the next segment. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time. I would love to thank Kimiebi Ebienfa, who took the time out to go to our studios to want to speak, but weren't able to connect with him. Would also want to thank Levi Mboushou, Global Affairs Analyst, and also John Thon-Majok, Senior Advisor for Institutional Development Migration Policy Institute. Thank you so much once again, gentlemen.